Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cougar Culture. We're up to episode 5 now. This is Dorian Alert, your host, former editor extraordinaire, former broadcaster extraordinaire. Of course, I'm not alone. I have with me Jish Sokolsky, my co-host, who is killing it on the broadcast game.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, man. Did you have a good weekend?
What's up? Yeah. I mean, you saw the divisional games, right? NFL?
That was crazy.
Crazy stuff.
I think that was probably the craziest and best weekend of football I've ever seen.
Best weekend of football of all time, maybe. Also coming back to classes, it's a little bit of a curve now, with the online school. Of course, you don't have to deal with that anymore, but it's rough. It's a little rough trying to get back into the swing of things. I was in Jamaica all break, and now I'm back in snowy Jersey. So
snow, Jamaica heat, yeah.
I don't know. It's a little. What do you prefer, right? It's a matter of personal preference.
Very true, very true. Well, we've got a jam-packed show for all of you today. We have an amazing After the Whistle segment today. We'll get started with that in just a second, but we also have great interviews with the women's tennis head coach, Jodi Valenti, and the women's swimming assistant coach, Matea Samardzic. We'll start now with After the Whistle.
I guess I'll lead this off with some women's basketball. We had 3 matches that we want to discuss in this After the Whistle segment against Rutgers Camden. That's the first one we're going to talk about. That was kind of it was a little unfair, to be honest. Kean obviously handled them because they came to Kean only dressed with 7 players. So it was a little unfair, and a lot of them got into foul trouble early on. So it was a constant rotation for them. Kean just outpowered them, outmanned them. Then the game in Montclair, that was a very, very poor performance. I'm going to call a spade. One of the worst shooting performances of the entire season, at least from what I've seen. They shot 19% from the field, only able to score 39 points in their first loss of 2022. And then, of course, the game that just happened on Harwood Arena's own home floor against Rowan. What an incredible comeback for the women's team against the first-placed Rowan Profs. They were down by 18 points at one point in the first quarter. It was 25-7. Then, of course, if you were watching or following the game at all, there was that scary injury that happened on the floor to Anaya Moore, who stays in our thoughts still, of course, as she recovers. But it just lit a fire under Kean for some reason. They were able to erase some of that deficit, went on a run late in the first half, early in the second half, but then kind of whittled away. Going into the fourth quarter, they were down by 11, scored 28 in that fourth quarter to win by 4. Just such an incredible effort, a lot of grit and determination from this squad, and they were able to come out with a W, which was beyond impressive. One of the best games of basketball I've ever seen.
Absolutely. It started out, that run that you mentioned started, of course, after the scary injury to Anaya Moore. Like you said, our thoughts and prayers are with her as she recovers. But it started with a couple of those famous corner threes that, we like to say on the broadcast by Shannon McCoy. She had a great shooting performance. In that game, she came out with another double-double on the season, 25 points and 10 rebounds. Shannon's been on fire, and the team, like you said, just rallied behind that injury that Anaya had. And, when I was talked to the team in prior years, they all ride for each other. They all love each other and love to see each other win. So, of course, this was no different. They were going to rally behind that, and they came out with the victory. Very close games. They won that one 68-64.
Although if the opportunity presents itself, I'm sure they would not pass up the dagger as McCoy puts up a quick shot. No good. Less than a minute to go, and that rebound's taken by Rowan. Good steal there. Here's LaGreca going inside. That's good to go. And one. Stephanie LaGreca with a huge bucket. 45.9 seconds to go, and Kean has an opportunity to make it a 4-point game with less than a minute to go.
And she gets swarmed on the baseline. A couple plays ago, I was commenting how she made too aggressive of a play there. Glad she didn't hear me because she went right back to it and got the steal.
That aggressiveness.
That was the embodiment of Cougar culture there. It is lonely saying corner three on the broadcast by myself now without you there, but I'm learning to cope as the days go on.
On the other side, we have the men's basketball team. They're current, and this past week they went 1-2. They had their first victory their only victory was against Rutgers Camden on January 15th. They won 65-63. Latrell West and J.D. Daniels both combined for 32 points. And then they lost their next two, unfortunately. Their first loss was against Montclair, in which they lost a very close game, 80-74. Jalen Jamison had himself a great game, though. 24 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. He has some great assists, highlight reel assists. And then Latrell West, of course, that's a name we're going to hear often. He had 21 points himself, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And then, of course, against Rowan, they did lose again, 96-78. Once again, Latrell West had 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. But this game actually features some faces that we're not used to seeing. Ethan Stith came off the bench this game. He gave 13 points himself, and Jalen Hudgens had 8 points, a couple of really nice dunks as well. He can jump out at the gym. Absolutely incredible game. Unfortunately, they did lose, but in these NJAC games, they're always exciting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And harping on the positive for a little bit, I had the pleasure of calling that Rutgers Camden game. An unbelievable defensive play led to the victory there. I wish that they posted the clip of it because it was just so intense. It was a tie ball game with 30 seconds to go. And it was J.D. Daniels who had the game-winning steal, and Nate Lyles threw it all the way down court to him to finish up with a layup. Only 1 second on the clock, although the clock expired in the arena, but that ended up being an error. But, it was very, very exciting to watch.
And we can hear some of that starting now.
Camden can run out the remainder of this clock as long as they do not commit a turnover. We could be looking at a very exciting finish, ladies and gentlemen. 25 seconds to go. 24 seconds on the shot clock. Over to Kornith. Looking for a smart shot. Here's Orzechowski with it. Back to Kornith. Bleeding out as much clock as possible. Over to Savage. Hearts are racing here in Harwood Arena. Savage loses the ball. Here comes Nate Lyles. Fast break opportunity to Daniels. Puts in the layup, and that's good to go. Kean wins. Kean wins. J.D. Daniels with the game-winning layup.
On to men's volleyball. As of the day that we're recording this, last night they had their season opener against Hunter after their previous season opener against NYU was postponed. Against Hunter, they completed the sweep in 3 sets. We had Duncan Belke with 9 kills leading the team, but a very impressive showing from rookie Quincy Roy, who led the team in blocks, also had a few kills of his own. He really contributed in his first ever collegiate start. So way to go to him. I mean, Kean really outsized this team, but you couldn't tell. Every single set, it got closer and closer and closer. That final set, I believe, came down to a score of 25-22. So, I mean, really, this was it was a well matched up match. Not to repeat myself, but Kean with a promising start to their season. Hopefully they can keep the ball rolling as they face the number 12 MIT coming up.
Yeah, like you said, Jish, I was in attendance for that game as well. It was really close throughout. I don't think that there was ever a portion where either team really got out to a huge lead. Kean, of course, was able to finish in all 3 sets, like you said, completing the sweep. And we pointed out prior to the game that this is essentially a brand new Kean squad. A lot of their previous players that were All-Americans have gone on and graduated. And, this is basically a brand new squad that they're using out there. So I'm looking forward to watching the team and seeing what they can do throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, 100%.
On to some general news. It was released on January 21st that the NJAC announced that the men's and women's basketball tournaments would be expanded. Now, normally in the NJAC tournament, the top 6 teams make it into the playoffs and they play until we have a champion. This year, because of COVID and some of the difficulties that the teams have been facing, the NJAC decided to allow all 10 teams to participate in the tournament. The 4 lowest seeds in the tournament will play in the first round games on Saturday, February 19th. The quarterfinal games will then be played the following Tuesday, February 22nd, and the semifinal games will be played on Thursday, February 26th, before the NJAC championship games will be played on Saturday, February 26th. So now all 10 teams are allowed in the playoffs. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Kean Cougars can do. If we look at the NJAC standings currently in both men's and women's basketball, Rowan currently sits at the top with a 9-2 conference record. Kean is tied with them with a 9-2 conference record, currently sitting at 2nd place. William Patterson is 3rd. Montclair State is 4th. Ramapo 5th. TCNJ 6th. Stockton 7th. NJCU sits at 8th. And then Rutgers Newark and Rutgers Camden are both tied for 9th and 10th. In the men's, Stockton University currently sits at the number 1 spot with a record of 9-2. Rowan is in 2nd place, tied with Rutgers Newark with an 8-3 conference record. Montclair State is 4th with a 6-5 record. William Patterson is 5th. NJCU is 6th. Kean is 7th. TCNJ is 8th. Ramapo is 9th. And Rutgers Camden is 10. So as it sits at the moment, Kean men's basketball team would be playing in those first round games.
Yeah, obviously the home court advantage is going to be huge for the Cougars. Both basketball squads have a very passionate following, to say the least. And packing out Harwood Arena would really be beneficial for both Cougar squads.
Absolutely. And in more general news, the NCAA conference was this weekend in Indianapolis. President Repollet and the athletic director, Kelly Williams, were in attendance, and there were several changes that occurred. One of them being the NCAA members approved a new constitution. The Division III President's Council voted for the Constitution Advisory Council to continue their work. One of the main legislation that was passed was to improve football safety. So one of the main changes going on changes the way the preseason practice period will occur. It establishes a maximum of 8 practices in full pads during the preseason. And also they have contact limitations of no more than 75 minutes of contact per day and no more than 2 consecutive days of full contact. Also, the legislation allows for student athletes to wear helmets during all 16 days of the spring football season. So all of the spring training that they have and all that, they'll be allowed to wear helmets throughout the 16 days. That was a lot of news. So I'm excited to get to our 2 interviews like we mentioned. We're going to kick it off with Cougar Quick Hits with women's tennis head coach Jodi Valenti. Thank you for sticking around with us, ladies and gentlemen. We are now joined by women's tennis head coach Jodi Valenti. How are you, Coach?
Good. Thank you for having me on, Dorian. It's a pleasure.
Of course. And so we're going to jump right into the questions. And I want to ask you, how did COVID affect the previous season? And, second part to that is, how did that schedule affect the way that you prepared heading into last year, where all the sports returned for just a brief moment?
Yeah. So the last year, this past year has been a very challenging time for both the student athletes as well as everyone at Kean University, just the general population, student athletes, administration, athletic director. It's just been a very challenging time. The student athletes, they really did, do their best. They wanted to get back on the court, and they did their best and worked through a challenging time, which is still, unfortunately, such a challenging time for everyone that's going through it. But it was a little rough, with a sense of, there were days where myself wasn't there, with COVID. There, some players had unfortunately got COVID. So we had practices that only had a few girls, or went to a few matches with not the full roster. But you know what? Like, through all the perseverance, we just worked really hard to just stick through it and do the best that we can. And at least we had the opportunity to be on the court, which we're all grateful for.
Absolutely. And, when you came back this fall, there was a brand new tennis court. What did that mean to have the university's backing in that sense?
It was amazing just to see it. Never mind just play on it, but it was like an amazing, it's beautiful. The whole facility, all the fields that they put in, that they redone and put all the money towards. It's amazing that Kean University cares so much about the athletes and the facilities, because it really is like one of the top-notch facilities. I would say, even though we're Division III, it's one of the best state universities throughout in the state of New Jersey. The facilities are phenomenal. They actually added cane tennis on the court, which that makes it look amazing. So a big thank you to the athletic director, Kelly Williams, all the other athletic administration, as well as Dr. Epaulet, for putting Kean athletics first.
Of course. And now you came back this past fall. Everything was somewhat back to normal. And I say somewhat because you have a new schedule set up. For those who don't know, tennis was normally played throughout the entire fall semester, and you may have played in a tournament here or there in the spring, but now the season is split up in two. You have the first half of the season in the fall, and the second half of the season now is in the spring. So what are some of the main differences that, you'll see performing in the spring?
Yeah, so just like you said, the NJAC was like one of the only conferences kind of in the NCAA that had the main season in the fall. So it was always a little bit more difficult to find matches in the fall, because most of the universities throughout, the US with the Division III level have their season in the spring. So it was exciting in the fall. I mean, we always had a huge 16 to 17, match schedule in the fall. So to have it for both seasons for the students, I think it's kind of exciting, because it's kind of like, now it's more like a year-long sport. Both the fall and spring both count towards the wins and losses, whereas some of the other sports, they're non-traditional. So it was a little bit difficult to find matches in the fall, other than the conference matches. But now I feel like, being that more teams play in the spring, hopefully, when COVID does end, we'll have more matches in the spring too. So it's exciting for the athletes, because like I said, they were used to just September, October, most of the matches, a few in the spring, but now they have something to look forward to in both the spring and the fall.
Of course. And so with that being said, how did you feel the first half of the season went, and what are some of your expectations for the second half?
So it was so for the fall, we had, I forget the exact number that we had scheduled, but we did get a few cancellations. One was due to weather, and one might have been due to COVID and not enough players. So in the spring, we definitely picked up the one match, which we're going to replay in the spring, which is great. Mm-hmm. But we started off, it was a little tough, because we only had a few matches last spring, and with all the challenging times with COVID, it didn't feel like the natural traditional season. So the girls kind of got started, and we started out a little rough, but for the spring, I mean, we have a big roster, a lot of depth within the roster. We have a lot of returning athletes, and we have an international player which is coming on in this spring, which is very nice. And then we're also going to get another student athlete from the volleyball team, she's going to be a great asset. And all the returning players that we have right now, whether it be a few of the freshmen or the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, I mean, I think they're ready to go and they're excited to play a full schedule this spring. So
it's incredible. And so now you also have an NJAC tournament, which was not something that the team is used to necessarily playing. So what are some of your expectations with the NJAC tournament, and how excited are you?
Yeah, so last spring was the first time they actually implemented an NJAC tournament, because in tennis they never had one. So the team obviously that had the most wins was that won the conference with the best record. So now that they implemented it, it was phenomenal. I mean, last spring that was our first one, and with COVID, instead of taking the top 4 teams, they took all the teams, which was great. Everyone had the opportunity, regardless of the record, and it was exciting for Kean because we never had that opportunity, but then we did get the opportunity, and we actually had an upset against Ramapo, which was a huge win, because in the beginning when COVID first hit, we had lost to Ramapo. I believe it was either 1-8 or 0-9, because I actually missed that match because that's when I had COVID. But then we came back in the NJAC tournament and we beat them 5-4. So it was a awesome match, and to be part of the first NJAC tournament with the win was big for Kean University women's tennis.
That is a big win.
It came down literally to the last match. Jan Bayan, and she's one of the seniors this year, our first singles, and it literally came down to every last point. So it was really exciting and intense.
I can't wait to watch some more throughout this spring.
I'm so excited for this season. I mean, it's going to be a little different. We're not used to spring, but it's going to be really exciting for all the student athletes and the girls.
Mm-hmm. I would like to thank you for coming on and joining us today, Coach Valenti. I'm looking forward to hopefully speaking with you some more throughout the spring and hopefully having some great updates.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
Now it's time to go beyond the competition with women's swimming assistant coach Matea Samardzic.
And welcome to this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very special guest on today. We have assistant coach Matea Samardzic from the women's swimming team, the only Kean swimming team. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So let's just jump right into it. To start off, you've of course swam at a D1 level, and now you are coaching. What would you say the differences are between coaching and competing, the main differences?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I guess when you're competing, you're really focused on your own performance. So you want to do your best, improve yourself, score points for your team. And as a coach, that changes. So it is not about you, it is about them, the athletes. So you want to share your knowledge and experience you had over the years and help your athletes improve. And, I'm still learning, but as a coach, you have to learn different components, not just about swimming, but also about the team and the way each individual thinks or works. So there are a lot of pieces that you have to put together.
So this was your first season coaching with Kean's women's swimming team, and they're at the halfway point. But, what exactly brought you to Kean this past September?
Yes. So So what drew me to Kean first was the head coach, Chris, right? Chris has been one of my coaches at St. Peter's during my freshman year. That was a while ago, so we go way back. So after I stopped swimming, I had to take a little bit of a break from the pool. Chris reached out to me and asked me if I would like to be an assistant coach. And eventually I said yes. Chris, is a great coach and a person, and his dedication towards the team and swimming is something that you can notice right away. Sometimes, you don't realize the importance of role head coach plays in lives of many. So that is something that drew me to Kean, and something that is keeping me is the team and people I work with and people that I met along the way.
So being at the halfway point, what have you experienced throughout, your first half, and what are you looking forward to in the second half?
Mm-hmm. I think what I've experienced so far is just great team dynamic and relationship I have with swimmers and the coach. I really love the energy they have on the pool deck during the practice, and you've been to some of the swim meets, so I'm sure you've seen it also, and I really look forward to working with them and assisting Chris and the team and improving athletes, not just their results, but also as a full, developing as a full person.
We mentioned earlier that you did swim for St. Peter and now you are coaching at Kean. There's obviously differences between the D1 schools and the D3 programs, a lot of misconceptions, but we'd like to know from you what you think some of the personal difference you've seen between D1 and D3 swimming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's only year one, right, for me, and I've been there mostly on Saturdays. But I think the biggest difference is that D3 athletic programs don't give, students scholarships based on their athletic ability. However, they are focused on the, whole student athlete experience. And I actually think that is one piece that makes this team unique. We do have a smaller team this year, but all of them, from my perspective and from what I've seen so far, want to be there. As I mentioned before, there is a great team dynamic and energy, and I love seeing that every time I step on the pool deck.
Being an athlete and being a swimmer in the pool, what would you say some of your favorite events were? I know you swam the 100 and the 200 backstroke, as well as the 400 individual medley. For those who don't know, the medley is the 4 different strokes. But what would you say were some of your favorite events to swim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my favorite event, my personal favorite, was 200 backstroke. It was my main event and something that I swam throughout the whole swimming career from beginning to the end. So that is my personal favorite.
On the Kean website, it does say that you are studying for your master's in HR management at NYU. So would you see that as your future career? And if so, how would swimming kind of play a part in your future life, would you say?
Yes, so that's correct. I'm currently pursuing a master's degree in human resources management, and I work as an HR journalist. And for my career, I want to continue to develop as an HR professional. However, I have always liked sports and I'm very active. So being an assistant coach allows me to stay connected to sport that, had a huge impact on my life. And right now I like the current arrangements, but we'll see what the future holds.
So one of the biggest things that people may not know about you that we happen to know because we've spoken to you before, but you swam in the Olympics back in 2016 in Rio. What was that experience as a whole like?
Yeah, so, competing at the Olympics is obviously the lifetime experience, and the path towards Olympics shaped me as a person I am today. Overall experience, it was amazing. First, it's incredible to be around the people from all over the world, coming from different cultures and competing at the highest level. And swimming in Olympics was exciting. Also, one moment you are in the warm-up pool on the back, and then next thing you know, you are racing in the main pool in front of the large crowd, which is really exhilarating, and you are definitely feeling the adrenaline rush.
You swam at St. Peter's, and after St. Peter's, you swam at SMU. Were the crowd sizes at both of those schools, did they prepare you for the type of environment that you would be in the Olympics? Or, is it very different from what we see in college swimming versus what we see at the highest level?
I think both of my experiences prepared me, for the swimming career I had, and they left a huge impact on me. I think I wouldn't be where I was without experiences that I had along the way, and that starts since I was a kid and started swimming through high school, through college, to Olympics. So I think each of experience really left a big mark on my life, and I think people that I trained with and worked with really helped me to get there.
And you've mentioned, I know we've mentioned swimming the entire time, but how was that a sport that you gravitated towards rather than something else other, like, most people want to play soccer or tennis, or how was that? How did you pick up swimming?
Oh, that's a good question. So I actually, when I was in the second grade, we went to the pool with the school for one day, and they were just testing the swimming abilities and stuff like that. So I grew up on the beach, so I learned how to swim when I was a kid, and they sent me an invitation to start swimming. So, and I wanted to try it, so I was like, oh, I want to try this, and that is how I ended up swimming. It was really, by accident, randomly, but I'm glad I made the decision.
Well, Dorian, if you don't have any more questions, I would just like to say thank you so much, Coach Samardzic, for taking time out to do this interview with us. It's really been our pleasure. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you for having me.
And now it is time to preview the week ahead for your Kean University Cougar sports. In basketball news, when we initially recorded this episode, the audio for this part got cut out, so we didn't get to recap the Rutgers Newark games, but those have already happened by this point. The women's team did beat Rutgers Newark by a score of 69-42, and the men lost by a score of 58-54. But in this week ahead, both teams will be traveling to Mahwah, New Jersey to play the Ramapo Roadrunners. Both teams did beat these teams last time they faced off, including a Pat Struzala electric game winner against the men's team. And then after that, on Wednesday, the 2nd, they will come back to Union, New Jersey to take on NJCU.
They'll be coming back to Harwood. It'll be another exciting matchup. The NJAC, like we always say, NJAC is always gives and delivers on these conference matchups. So I'll be excited to watch those. Unfortunately, the sports did get canceled this weekend due to the Nor'easter. We'll start with women's swimming that got postponed. They will actually now race on February 4th against the College of Staten Island and Sarah Lawrence College. And now for men's volleyball, the Clash at Kean tournament was canceled, but the men will still be taking on Widener University on Tuesday, February 1st in Chester, Pennsylvania.
That was a fun episode, to say the least. We had a lot of great guests, a lot of great segments, and this was Kean Cougar Culture with Dorian and Jish. We will be back next week. You won't want to miss it. We're going to have another exciting week of sports. So stay tuned, everyone, and stay safe.
Absolutely. You don't want to miss it.